you've always lived in the tropics. You like, well, not always lived in tropics, but you have a big affinity for the tropics, right? But I heard that before you lived in the tropics and everything, you were a fanatical Arctic explorer. So what happened? Did it just get too cold for you?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and someone showed me the way to the tropics, and I sort of didn't get back to the Arctic since then.
Right.
No. I was on the explorer ship.
Welcome to the Salon. Yes, it's a long time since we have been in the Salon for an artist interview. And this month we are having an exhibition, Australian artist Roland Nancarrow. As we all know, I usually start with a story about how we met. Only this time it's a bit different because I can't remember. I can remember a basic time. It's around about the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, and probably met each other at a place called MoFo, the Merchants of Fine Objects. But how we met, I don't know. I just cannot remember. So, but anyway, welcome to Roland Nancarrow.
Thank you, Warren, for the introduction. Yeah.
I just can't remember.
And I can't remember either.
But I did, but I did find, you remember this book? This book here, this is 4 Years in Leaky Queenslander. This is actually a book about MoFo, right? And even though I can't remember when we actually met, there's a really good photo. You're in here, and I'm also in here as well. I'll just see if I can find this photo. And it's when I did stand-up comedy in there, right? Where's the page?
It is a good photo. And it needs the two to explain the situation.
Right. Yeah. This is the actual book here, the page. This is actually me here doing stand-up comedy at MoFo. And over here is Roland with a good friend Don Johns, laughing at something I said, I guess. But it's like, it was good times, wasn't it?
They were very good times, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And especially that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good night. And the thing is, there's like music going on. It wasn't just art, there was music, exhibitions, and all sorts of things happening, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great collegiate of people. Yeah. You met down there and then you found to do other things.
So do you actually remember how we first met? I don't remember anything.
Met a lot of people there. We were always meeting them, and you might have a chat to someone one night, and then continue that conversation. You might have only met them and said, "Hey, yeah, we met, at the last party here," and you'd continue that.
It must have been at a party, one of the parties. I just, we're here now.
Yeah, and that was 2007.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah. Right, okay, so that's what happened. We met at MoFo, a great place ran by Santubo and his cohorts. But anyway, I've got some good questions lined up here, I think. We're really gonna test Roland a little bit, I think. So, Roland, cheers.
Cheers. Here's to being here, and thanks for the invitation.
It's gonna be a good exhibition. Yeah. So, I think I'm gonna start with a couple of questions about how you got started as an artist, because that might have relevance with younger artists today, right? So the first one is that I remember when I was in high school, I had to give up art for a couple of years to study German. I was told many times that because I could draw, I could go back to art anytime. And you started your working life in banking, but before that, when you were in school, And you mentioned something about this in an interview with Nina Shadforth at Caloundra Regional Gallery in Queensland, Australia. I think you're in a similar situation where everyone told you that art is something that you can return to later in life, yeah?
More about it wasn't going to be much of a career if you'd followed your art interests. And was encouraged not to follow them or find something that's going to land you in a secure job.
Right.
So I think at year 10 level that you had to make choices about which subjects you took for year 11 and 12. And I had an interest in architecture, and so I took subjects that might have been able to sort of get to architecture at university, which were a lot of science subjects, and art wasn't included. Like the technical drawing, what we called back then the GD and P, but we had to do physics and chemistry and probably high-end maths. I can't remember what maths it was, but art wasn't a prerequisite for architecture. So there was no art involved, and there were the school I went to, maybe half a dozen people did art, I remember, in year 11, 12. Although I do remember who the art teacher was, a really cool guy, and was friends, with that teacher. Shouldn't say he invite the students around for parties. So we did go around for parties, but I wasn't one of his students, Man, he could get in trouble for that these days.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but he was just out of teachers training college then. Yeah, cool young man. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm wondering if, working in the bank made you financially comfortable enough that you were able to pursue this transition to being an artist. Now, I'm aware of quite a few artists now who started out in the financial business world, and after a career there, retired early to become an artist. When I was 17, I was also thinking about working in a bank. But an art teacher suggested I go to art college instead. So I followed the more traditional route, I guess. However, in this day and age, I wonder if it might be a wiser strategy for any young artist to make money first and then return to art. Do you think this would be sound advice now?
Sound advice, but I wouldn't advise anyone who didn't have to do it. No, I would say now, follow your passion. But I would give them advice on how to sort of, make sure you put money away. Make sure that, that you didn't blow it all on art materials, although I think you should blow it on the best art materials anyway, when you got the money. But I think it seems like in any creative area, whether it's sort of music or the arts, it's going to be hard to find a full-time job in that, and like most of my artist friends, although I have a few artist friends that after maybe in their 30s didn't go back to a full-time job and survived, and survived fairly well. But I think these days everyone sort of needs that job, but it's great if you can find something that works both ways, supports each other. Banking certainly didn't.
Right.
Yeah, but I got no regrets about that either.
Right,
It's just at a certain time that, man, I don't want to. I could have done that for the rest of my life and made art a hobby. It was not. It was. Yeah, and I guess, and then the opportunity came along that I could. Get to art college, but I was married. I had one child at the time, or one child came along when I was in first year at art college. Yeah, but there was support, and college was free.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, a big thing, and that was the turning point for me. I could get out of, I could leave a banking career. I could go to art college where there was no fees, and you even got support from the government.
Right.
Thanks, Goff.
So, what age were you then when you became a mature student? Do you remember?
It was mid to late 20s.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Mid to late 20s. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think something for the kids to think about anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your art now. Some of which I have here. This painting I bought off you quite a while ago. I think when I met you that time, you were bringing in elements of Torres Strait culture into your work with like tall sculptures that seem to be influenced by ornate headdresses and maybe weapons. Recently there is much talk about cultural appropriation. I uncovered this myself in a solo show last February. Do you still carry these influences in your work?
Initially, for the wall works, they were inspired by looking at mainly oceanic art,
right?
Not so much the Torres Strait art. I didn't, initially when I did those works, probably wasn't even thinking about moving to Cairns.
Right.
The first show was 85, Metro Arts in Brisbane, and there were a few wall works in that show. It was mainly painting. But the wall works there were influenced by African art.
Okay.
But I did have an interest, in that that wall sort of sculptural thing.
Yeah.
And then when I moved to the tropics, looking at the things that interest me in the tropics, looking at negative spaces, shadows cast by palm trees and that, you get this sort of patterning.
Right.
And
there's some on here, right?
And there's some there. Yeah, still there in the lid. So I've never directly taken from any Torres Strait Islander art, but I've always also found interesting when I see things and thought, God, that's what they do. Right. That's where they got that design for the prow of that boat.
Yeah.
We've both been looking at the same things.
Yeah.
And the artists that I do know that live there now today. I see that in their work, but I haven't been there to get that. I see that in my own garden at home.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that I did find bought a book of 2 big books on oceanic art once, and looking at a Fijian war club.
Yeah.
Just looking at the shape of it.
Yeah.
Kaboom! I reckon it was referenced ginger flower.
Okay.
The shape of a ginger flower. It even had the hook, like just the little leaf before that ginger flower comes out. Little hook there. They would have used that to hook around someone's neck, I guess, once they whacked them over the head. But my things are all more peaceful and celebratory.
Yes, no, definitely more peaceful. Yeah. So, okay, maybe I was thinking of somebody else when I was thinking about the Torres Strait thing. But actually, are you conscious of cultural appropriation these days when you're doing artwork? Do you think about it beforehand?
I think if there's anything that might relate to in my work, I mean, when I'm painting, I do like to sort of put down some like dabs and things like that. And but I think the artists I looked at that sort of painted that way, they've been painting that way for centuries.
Right.
From Impressionism to Post-Impressionist artists, even up to the artists that impressed me in the 1980s, like Howard Hodgkin, the big blobs of sort of paint and stuff. The dot painting came after that.
Right.
And so even my painting, I will put like little dots that'll sort of fill in, create an interest area sometimes. Nothing to do with cultural significance in my work. So someone might look at that, and I find that an interesting thing that, I think everything's been done before, and you don't try to step on anyone's toes anyway, and I don't think I ever have. It's just me. It's what I've looked at in my life. You might have been, I think, way back in the 80s. I might have looked at some. It wasn't around. There weren't books on Aboriginal art, but I remember finding a book on Aboriginal spears and things in a library in Brisbane. When people used to visit libraries, there was no Google. And it was an interesting little book. And I might have taken, because I was a teacher at the time, I might have borrowed that book, gone and made many photocopies that I might still have in a folder somewhere in the archives back home. Yeah. Oh, it's interesting that, I don't know what drew me to those objects. I think it might have been some connection to cultures. Previous cultures and things, and saying, I'm here today. What's about that? I found something interesting about that relates to today in some ways. I still do in some things. Even if it's just the form, not the cultural thing. We're living in a very different culture.
Oh yeah. I think it's something that you know, we have to be, as artists, we have to be kind of aware of now. But, yeah, all right, okay. Right, now let's talk about the tropics, which you feel very passionate about. We've talked about how you're influenced by the colours and the light in the tropics. And having also lived in Cairns, I can understand that. Some of the work that you have in this exhibition was completed though in other tropical areas like the Maldives, for example. Do you feel you respond differently in your paintings to your environment when outside Cairns?
I don't think I do, because I can't think of instances, but the works here that were painted in the Maldives, different to like this one here, although the starting point to the paintings was similar.
Right.
And what I was trying to do with those was get a feel, I guess I used to do that too, with a series of works, whether 4, 5, 6 or 7 works, to get a feeling of that sense of place in that series of paintings, and with those works there was that sense of sort of being on an island and being close to the water. You know, but also there's the pandanus leaves sort of through just sort of silhouetted through all those works, which are sort of overhanging the water. I mean, that happens in Australia too, if you live at Noosa or somewhere like that. But I don't sort of see that lapping of things like which has happened in that. And so I'm grateful for that experience to sort of live on island and sort of live that island life. But if I can just jump back to that last question, there, one of the first islanders on the Maldives that blew me away when they were having a celebration there. It was the end of Ramadan. And the local Maldivians had sculptures, woven palm leaf sculptures and woven palm leaf sort of ornamentation things. Boom, just like the TI Islanders. Right. But this is out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You know? Yeah. So there was something about that culture with the material they were using, you know. And like there was one big like shark, woven like shark. Right. Could have come directly, but you're thousands of miles away. And I don't think they were appropriating Thursday Islanders, and I don't think the Thursday Islanders maybe even appropriated from them what they see, what the materials were there to work with. I think I've always sort of, lots of artists do have some sort of ideal in their head anyway. And I guess always sort of the earliest painting I might have been inspired by was sort of Impressionist art. Impressionist art wasn't painted in the tropics, but it was all about capturing light. Yeah. And I think one of the paintings I still sort of admire, one of Matisse's, I think it was the terrace of one of his friends in Saint-Tropez. It's all this greens and blues and, you know, harsh shadows and things. You get that, might have been summertime, might have been autumn, might have been spring, I'm not quite sure when that was sort of painted. I love the light here in Osaka at the moment, and it's all you know, it's autumn sort of weather. Special light here, and in the tropics, living in Cairns, it's mainly that winter light anyway. Right. That I do love, you know. And I'm thinking when I lived in Brisbane, it's that winter light, the summer light in the tropics gets washed out, hazy, you know, atmosphere, humidity comes through it. Things get washed out. There's a sharp sort of colours that inspire me.
Now, I think the paintings you've got in this exhibition that you did in the Maldives, it's different from this one, definitely. Right, the motifs and things, but you can still see it's you.
That's good. I'm glad there's still, you know, I do like that. You know, recognise some element of my work.
Right. Okay, so recently there are some groups opposed to the continued use of fossil fuel, and they are using the vandalism of art to draw attention to the problem of climate change. Do you agree or sympathise with the protesters throwing food onto paintings in museums?
I certainly don't sympathise with them. And I think that's just the wrong way to go about protesting. Right. I mean, I might feel strongly about things, but I guess, and I'm, you know, in private I'll make those bring out those points to people. But I have taken part in a few marches and things. But and I find that if you get too involved with the protest thing, you lose your way anyway. You lose your way as an artist. That you might sort of get too involved with I don't know, that aspect of it. So I like to sort of stand back. I'll have my comment. I'll have my views. And certainly the destruction of artwork. No, that's and certainly we've got to do something about climate change. You know, we feel it, we experience it. I'm not sure every part of the planet is experiencing it equally. I'm experiencing in Cairns. We have these bouts of heat waves that I don't think we've ever had before, and they've had one so early. Like, luckily I'm here now and not at home. They've had sort of a week of it, this sort of intense heat wave, and I remember this year, early in the year, there was like 2 weeks. It's just an intense heat wave. That's sort of not normal. It's usually hot and humid, you know, in the summertime and in the wet season. But there is changes, you know, like, and I noticed that with the migratory bird. The migratory birds are arriving earlier in the season, and like that heat waves is earlier in the season. They do last longer. We are having this longer range of temperatures, but then we've got that beautiful sort of winter when that finally comes also. Things are changing. Not sure how to go about it.
So
big question.
Yeah.
We all should do our little bit as we can, I think. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, that, for example, that group that threw the tomato soup over the painting, if they came to you and said, "Oh, we want to put your painting as our protest poster," what would be your reaction?
I think I'd say, yeah, go for it. Actually, this one might be a good one. Because it looks like it's already got the soup spilled on it, or the spaghetti drained down through the middle of it. You know, maybe. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't support them desecrating or damaging artworks or damaging anything in their protests. You know, or causing disruption to people's lives within their protests. But if they want to use some artwork as a banner or something, well, sure. You know, then I'd feel like I'm doing my bit more than I have been, but not if they continued with the desecration of art objects as a part of their protest.
Well, as we talked about this week, I'm all for it. Because I think those paintings are just ridiculous. The value of those paintings is just ridiculous now. But anyway, that's another topic.
That is,
yes, we could talk about that for hours. Okay, right, finally, you have exhibited in other countries outside Australia, but this is your first solo show in Japan. So have you approached this show any differently, and how do you feel about being here?
Feel great about being here because it's first opportunity to travel since COVID. I've been locked down for 3 years.
Yeah, you like travelling, don't you?
Yeah, I had liked travelling, and I was sort of apprehensive, 3 years with it. So being here feels great, and it's great to be great to finally see your gallery and appreciate sort of being invited to show my work here. I think I first started coming to Japan maybe sort of 7 years ago, and for a run there once a year or twice a year up until the COVID era. And the trips were made to the Maldives, consecutive years, and they were all sort of, for some reason, preceded by trips to Japan. And sometimes I think because I was interested in contemporary art, also interested in historical art of Japan, a lot of that sort of went in my head, sort of went with me. Didn't pick up reference books or anything. And I think even though these are not works, the watercolours from the Maldives here, I think there was something about looking at artworks, historical artworks more so, the works that were watercolour works, the design also, I think, fabric design, things like that that you see around mainly in galleries as well as sort of on the street, more so a little bit on the street, I think sort of started to come out in those works. And that's sort of been, I think, a continuing thing. So it's good to sort of be back here and have it refreshed. Well, it'll be interesting to see who turns up, who accepts the work, who comes by. Like, I know that the whole gallery's been a new venture for you. Like, you've done 12 months at it.
Yeah.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
That's true.
It's always, get invited to have a show that I'd find is going to work and it's going to be exciting and it's going to have, there's no, I don't. You better make me $1 million. Like, there's nothing of that.
I'll try.
I just love I love the opportunity to get my work out here, and have the experience of coming, meeting new people and everything.
Well, one of the purposes of this gallery is to build a kind of bridge between Osaka and Australia, contemporary art. And you were one of the kind of first people we thought of to help get that process started. So it became a timing issue, didn't it?
There were a few false starts.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think we got it right in the end.
Yeah, I think so. I think the timing's right.
Yeah.
The gallery's starting to get more well known now, and so this is kind of about. It's actually probably the right time for you to come here, and hopefully also we can connect with people in Australia as well, and people visiting from Australia can pop in and see other stuff that's happening here. So, yeah.
And there have been inquiries myself, what's the gallery, and I've sort of been, getting that feedback back to Australians.
Well,
so it's things take time, but it's you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you do. That's right. But when we plan to do this is one of the stepping stones. So we also thanks very much for coming along and doing the show. Thanks very much for coming over. Cheers.
And thanks for the privilege. I feel very privileged to be invited to here and
we're privileged you're
hosted here. And see the work on the walls, and what a great job you've done on the. I stuffed it up with hanging the sculptures in there, but left the rest up to you, Warren, and that looks great. Thanks. Cheers.
Well, thank you. Cheers. Again, another artist I could ask 100 questions, but we'd be here all night. But I think we got good interview, some really interesting answers from an artist who has a long career, and I think we can all learn something. He's having an exhibition here at the gallery for the whole of November. Come along and see his artwork. It's very different from things you usually see in Osaka. And so Roland, thank you very much for coming.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Warren. Thank you.
And good luck to both of us, hey?
Yeah. I know, good luck's coming.
All right, okay. All right, thank you very much. See you next time.